All right, pro wrestling fans. All right, IWC. I apologize for the interruption. I apologize for the technical videos, but I'm back on Chaos Corner, the show. Go back and check out the opening monologue I just put up. It's only about 8 or 10 minutes where we talk about what's going to happen here today on the channel. An episodic YouTube adventure. One man, unique, unedited, unscripted, raw dog for you, the fans. We're going to jump right into it. Again, check out the monologue. Drop an elbow on that like button. I can't thank you guys and gals enough for being here. This is a sore spot with me in today's industry. Tag team wrestling. Or the lack of thereof, and how it's taken away from the business of professional wrestling. And there's no two ways about it. You go back to the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. You'll see unbelievable tag teams. Tag team wrestling and feuds and rivalries and championships and runs that were beyond compare, that made the business of professional wrestling stronger, better, more entertaining, more realistic. Today, no matter what company you're talking about, they barely scratched the surface of tag team wrestling, and it's been that way for almost 2 decades. So this is going to be in no particular order. I've put a compilation together for the last several days, really doing my research and trying to come up with every tag team that I could think of. Now, there's going to be a lot that I miss, I'm sure. But I'm going to get into the crux of the top. I don't know. You're going to hear me throw out about 50 different tag teams. I want to know what you think. I want you to tell me what your top tag teams are. Now, I get it. The demographic here is almost 35% female. I also get that the demographic, although strong here at 18 to 49, 18 to 40, that demographic is about 40% of this 40% of this audience. But I have a strong contingent of the old man brand, the over 50 demo god, which is about 35% of my viewing audience. Somewhere thereabouts, if you add it up. I mean, I don't know. I'm as confused as a baby at Hooters right now when it comes to the demographics and the analytics. Because since YouTube has stepped on me and still owes me well over $1,000 from commercial ads. And that's just a fact. Stepping on my throat, censoring me, the whole 9 yards. I'm trying to make a couple of pennies off of advertisement and sponsors. But I got to pick tar out of my ass because they've kicked me to the curb. So this is for you, YouTube. I love this platform. I'm here out of motivation, passion, to give back. It's not about making anything because I'm going to do this whether there's 1 subscriber, 100, 1,000, 150,000. I'm still going to continue to do this because of who I am. And because of the 30-year career that I've had, the 40-year journey, and the over 50 years as a fan, because I am the over 60 demo god. That's right, I realize I look like I'm 35. Because I'm holding it down, keeping it real, and maintaining, living mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally fit. Surrounding myself with like-minded people. Praising our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, because without him, none of this would be possible. And I give all the glory to him. But that's why I'm here. So again, I appreciate you guys. Hit the like button, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Get us in the algorithm. Now, there's over 5,000 videos on this channel. Well over 1 million total views. We're no different than anyone else. We're unique. This is a niche channel, but it's for everybody because you come here for facts. You come here to learn things, not just opinions. There's story time. There's this date in pro wrestling history. There's live to tape watch-alongs. There's Dinner for Two, the show I do with my wife. On the shorts, there's every person in my family that you can think of, from my kids to my granddaughter. And I put a face to the product. I'm real as real can get. No bells, no whistles, old school, tradition, honor, respect. So let's get into something that's really been sticking in my craw. I meant to say crow, as a matter of fact. Don't ever underestimate the crow, perhaps the smartest bird on the planet. And they remember. Don't underestimate the crow. As we get off on a tangent here, but you know that's what I do. I'll end up tying it up like a nice little bow. My mind's like a lazy Susan. It'll come back around. I have amnesia and deja vu at the same time. I think I've forgotten this before. I will be taking attendance. Bueller? Bueller? Anyone? All right, let's get right into it here as I ramble, stumble, rumble, mumble, fumble. But you know you guys like when I do that. That's what I do. That's why I'm the guardian of chaos. Hello, McFly. Is anybody home? All right, here we go in no particular order. 70s, 80s, 90s, and just the importance of tag team wrestling. And again, I'm not going to break down all their title runs. I know I've repeated that. I get it, especially on the opening monologue. But I just want to pay homage to tag team wrestling because that's what I love. Although I grew up as my number one guy who I followed and who I admired and respected, it was no doubt Bruno Sammartino. But there were many others as well. Remember, I was born in the early 60s. I don't want to give it totally away. I grew up as a young boy and then into a teenager in the 70s. And by the 80s, I was already in my early 20s. And we get into the 90s, and I was already approaching the big 3-0. So when everything was crazy and what you guys think you know about rock and wrestling or the original WrestleMania, and then into the Attitude Era, the Ruthless Aggression Era, the invention and advent of ECW, I was already in my middle 30s, while most of you were still dripping down your daddy's leg. What I say, no offense, man, lighten up. So remember the time frame of where I'm coming from and who I am. I started my journey in this business in 1983. Made my managerial debut in 1991. And retired from active in-ring in 2008. Had a few years where I traveled overseas to the land of the rising sun. Finished out my 25-year career behind the walls. Went through some personal tragedies and loss. And have been active back in this business over the last dozen years. In the booth. Ring announcer. Play-by-play. My strong suit color commentator. Promoter. Everything you could think of still to this day. That's my journey in this career for those of you that want to know. And again, I appreciate each and every one of you. Let's get into it, man. Well, hold on. Don't go anywhere. And again, I'm going to try not to just read off names of tag teams. But again, where is tag team wrestling? Again, I told you I'd come back around with my mind. Where is tag team wrestling in 2025? Somebody tell me out there. Yeah, maybe a few years ago you could have said FTR, the Usos, a few other teams, but where the fuck are we now? Where? The Young Bucks? Matthew and Nicholas? Where? Tell me, even though the Hurt Syndicate, they weren't really a team. What's going on in the WWE? The War Raiders? Okay, they're good enough, but somebody tell me. We know with the passing of Jay, there's no long of them boys. It's just that boy. And again, one of the greatest tag teams of this era in the 2000s. Somebody tell me. Tell me why. Shouldn't it be brought back? Yes, I'm hydrating. I'm bouncing back and forth to the water to hydrate. And of course, I gotta have the espresso. Come on, man! El Silencio, ¿estás it? By the way, for all my brothers over in the pack rim, Pea oi melihini kane pupule wiki wiki aloha and mahalo. Konnichiwa, bitches, arigato from the chaos, Austin, are you with me? OTS Tribal Queen, how are you doing? And I hope everybody's staying safe out there. Situational awareness, your own discernment. And I mean that from the heart. With everything that's going on in this country, politics, people talking about the NWA, and I'm not talking about the NWO. I'm not talking about Too Sweet. I'm not talking about Hogan, Nash, all the outside. I'm not talking about the Eric Bishop 83 Weeks, WCW. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about reality. Wars, rumors of wars. The environment is crazy. The planet's rotation. Whatever you guys think, you want to call conspiracy theories, when they end up being accurate, it's no longer a conspiracy. And we were brought up in my era to question things, to have theories. So get your head out of your ass for all you extremes on this side or that side. Inflation, cryptocurrency, border invasions, crime that's out of control, violence. You reap what you sow. So I'm throwing all that out there now because this is a stress reliever, a temporary distraction. And isn't that what we need right now? Because I know that I do. Prepare. I'm trying. We fall short every day. Just trying to be the best that we can be. Anyway, because I'll bounce all over the place here, but I have to throw in reality and current affairs and what we're living in and not just forget about everything. So that's why I kind of mix the two to give you the message. Top tag teams, again, we're still talking about it. I'm getting back to the point. I'm belaboring the issue. I'm whipping it like a donkey. I'm beating it like a dead horse. I wouldn't want a dead horse. I love animals. Here we go. Now, I'm gonna throw some names out there from long before most of you were born, but hopefully if you're here, I know you're smart. You don't have the brain of a dehydrated baby, so I know that you're doing your research. Let's go back to tag teams like the Bruiser and the Crusher. Two of the toughest men walking the face of the planet in the 1970s. Whether it be Detroit, Chicago, Indiana, Wisconsin, Bruiser and Crusher, the WWA, Crusher Laskowski, Dick the Bruiser, not Dick the Boozer. That's disrespectful for that guy. But Dick the Bruiser, two of the toughest guys and one of the greatest tag teams of the 1970s. Talk about a tag team that was ahead of their time, rough and tumble. Go out and do some research. And again, I know most. I'm not taking you guys for having the brain of a turnbuckle. So I know most of you will know this, but just go out and do the research. Bruiser and Crusher. Unbelievable tag team. The Valiant Brothers. Jimmy, Johnny, and Jerry. Luscious Johnny, Handsome Jimmy, Gentleman Jerry. Now, back in the middle 70s, into the a little bit later in the 70s, middle 70s, when I was, I don't know, 11, 12 years old, 9, 10 years old, I went out personally and had T-shirts made at that age in that area for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation and the Valiant Brothers. One of the ultimate heel tag teams in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Though that was probably for the era my favorite tag team. Saw them live many times. I'll never forget being at the Coliseum. Legendary area here in the greater New England tri-state northeast area. In the shadows of Titan Towers. Right down the fucking road. Yeah. I'm close by. I'm watching. And just know that I'm watching. And I know that you know I'm watching. The analytics tell me. YouTube. So I'll never forget one of the times I saw them at I want to say 76, 77 at the Coliseum. the Valiant Brothers. Everybody's cheering for the face. I'm not sure who they were going against that night, but because I was concentrating on them, it'll come back to me. Again, I'll figure out who the opponents were. But it was Jimmy and Johnny, okay? And I'll never forget the 7,000 or 8,000 fans that were there. Again, I think the Coliseum held 8,000 to 10,000. New Haven Arena, New Haven Coliseum. Again, not that far from here either. Just like the casinos. Hartford Civic Center. Boston Garden. Madison Square Garden. The Philadelphia Spectrum. The Providence Civic Center. All right here in this area. Not to a stone's throw from the Baltimore Arena. D.C. Pittsburgh. I don't know if that's good or bad. Not too far from the Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens back in the day. So just to give you a little idea of the time frame here as we jump into the time machine. And I'm going to make this into a two-parter, a three-parter. It's going to be a mini-series here about between the monologue and the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, because there's literally hundreds of tag teams. You couldn't fucking name 10 right now, could you? Could you name 10 tag teams right now in 2025? And I'm not talking about going to the MLW, NWA, New Japan, Ring of Honor, TNA, Impact. Maybe you can include them. I'm talking about between the WWE, AEW. I'll throw in TNA if you want, if they're supposed to be the number 3. How many tag teams and how long have they been together? Can you name 10? Can you name a dozen? I challenge you right now. That have been together, not just thrown together. Not Brian Cage and Dralistico or, I don't know, Hologram and Hobbs or, you know, Yuta and Pac. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about teams that have been together for, say, I don't know, more than 3 or 4 years, 5 years, won multiple tag team championships. The Usos don't team together anymore. FTR is basically persona non grata at this time. Name a fucking tag team. Name the top tag teams in those companies right now. You're going to say the Creed Brothers? You're going to say the War Raiders? You're going to say the New Day? Who are you going to say? I'm off on a ramble here. So again, back to the New Haven Coliseum. Everybody's cheering. Again, crowds were always jammed to capacity back in the day, back in the era, the 70s and the 80s, even into the 90s, jammed. And I know it's coming back now overseas, and everybody's all cranked up and hyped up. Oh, the overseas crowd, the energy, this, that. No shit. I apologize. I take that away, YouTube. No kidding. These countries, whether it's Brussels, Down Under, Japan, Europe, Italy, Spain, Greenland, Iceland, Ireland, Wales, UK, London, wherever the fuck you want to talk about. Do you know why the crowds are so crazy? Because what do they go there? Once every 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? They don't go overseas that often. I realize they're trying to capitalize it now. Oh, everybody embarrass the United States crowd. When you have it fucking every night, 7 nights a week, plus the indies, which are like the territories. There's literally pro wrestling live on TV or live in person 7 nights a week in this country. Canada and Mexico will throw in there as well. Maybe even Japan. So consider yourselves lucky. It's oversaturated. We take it for granted before you start comparing with all these other countries. Oh, the energy, it's so great, they put us to shame. No kidding. Really? Come on, guys, get your head out of your ass for the non-subscribers and the casuals that come through here. And whoever's fucking listening, because I apologize for the cussing. I really do. I have to repent for that because that's one of the worst things that I do. I fall short every day. I told you that. But that's why. That's what's going on. as far as the energy for the crowds and everything that they're talking about. Go overseas to Saudi. Go. Go wherever it is that you're going. Take the risk. Go ahead. Travel all over. It's a global brand, right? But let's not get crazy. And speaking of all that, because I'm off on a tangent here, on ticket sales and ratings and live venues. First off, there's hardly any live house shows anymore or anything like that, ruining the product. It's all pay-per-view, TV tapings, the whole 9 yards. And I guess that's a good thing for the talent, and they're making money. But before you start bragging about how much in ticket sales and revenue and largest record, every record's broken the next time by a records. And again, like I always say, nostalgia just ain't what it used to be. Because you're overcharging for prices. 25 grand to go have dinner with Cena. 8 grand or 12 grand or 6 grand to have a beer with Hogan. Thousands of dollars for front row seats. Nosebleeds are in the hundreds. Yeah, some people say, no, okay, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to. I get to. It's overpriced. You've gotten rid of the working class, the family man, the blue collar guy, just like this country and the government's trying to do. That's a fact. I don't give a fuck what political side you're on. I don't care about your sexual orientation, identity, gender. I don't give a shit about any of that. And I keep saying that, and I shouldn't be. I apologize for the cussing. I really mean that. It just comes out when I get full of verve and vigor, piss and vinegar, whatever you want to call it. You guys understand what I'm talking about. Because I know that you do. And I know we're here to talk about tag teams. So let me not keep getting distracted. Austin, rein me in here. Focus. Back to the story. I'll get back to it. This is going to be in segments. So they're all cheering the face. Now the Valiants take over. They start getting the heat. And just me and my buddy Rico, and I haven't seen Rico in 30 years, 40 years maybe, I don't know, 35 years. We were the only two that stood up basically in that whole crowd, that whole arena of thousands of people, 8,000, whatever it was, 10,000, and throwing our fists in the air. And I'll never forget it. I was a teenager. I wasn't a little kid, and that's how much we bought into it, and kayfabe was real. It's a different era. I don't expect you guys to relate to what the fuck I'm talking about. I don't expect that. But remember, and we'll use the mirror thing again like we always do. The rear view mirror. Oh, you're stuck in the past. Oh, man. No, that's not the way it is. There's a rear view mirror is smaller for a reason. I get it. But you need it. Correct? You have to look back, respect it, acknowledge it. For those who paved the way, the carpenters, the ones that came before you. Because without that and them, you can't get to where you are, to where we are today. And you certainly won't be able to look into the big windshield without looking back. So you can go full steam ahead to get to where you want to go. So remember it. And then look out into that windshield to wherever it is you want to go. And mash the pedal, man. So we stood up, throwing our fists in the air. It was unbelievable. Those were the days. And again, I know it's tough to relate. We're in different times, different generations. Things evolve. That's great. That's beautiful. I do too. That's why at my age, I still watch and cover and report on the fucking product. But research and history is my thing. So the Valiant Brothers, what a story that is, right? And then there's from the West Coast and from Mexico and the Texas area, one of the best tag teams for the day in the 70s. And I'll continue to say the day or throwback or flashback or the golden era, was the team of the Great Goliath and Black Gordman. In their traditional red tights and black trunks. Gordman and Goliath watching back in the day in the Olympic Auditorium in L.A. Unbelievable. Or whether it be down in the Texas area, I believe it was Bosch, Mexico. Gordman and Goliath were one of the best tag teams of the 70s. Bruiser Crusher, I already said it. Jimmy Johnny, and then later on Jerry, the Valiant Brothers. Gordman and Goliath. Go out and do your research. No me jodas, maricón, muévete, culo pendejo. They not know what I say, man. Then there's the legendary tag team, which I'm sure a lot of you guys know about, the Texas Outlaws. Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch. Dirty Dick, if you will. Now, that was a tag team. Now, remember, we all know Rhodes and Murdoch, and you think of their heyday in the 80s, and they wrestled well on into the 90s. But do the research of when they started. I'm not saying late 60s. So we'll go with the early and middle 70s. Even in the end, and when they were in WCW and NWA together. But didn't always team, obviously. Dick Murdoch and Dusty Rhodes, both from the same great state of Texas. An unbelievable, brawling, beer-drinking team, just like teams of the era like Bruiser and Crusher, that lived the life. That's who they were. We know American Dream and what he went on to become. And then Dustin and Cody, his kids. We know that Murdoch was one of the toughest men, not only in real life outside the ring. They were beer drinkers, hell raisers. What an era of the 70s. Again, I'm not going to break it down into details. We'll be here forever. I'm going to try to keep each segment at maybe a half an hour so I can pump out some content. I got to catch up. I really miss being here, man. And I'll go, I've only done 2 live shows on this channel, but I'm going to try to go back. But because of the way and the format of this show and how it's ad-lib and organic, and yeah, I'm talking into a fucking camera, I like to have it on tape and put it up and then edit it and put it over on Twitter. So it's going to be in segments. Rhodes and Murdoch, what a team of the 70s. One of the best of the 70s. Then we go to, again, current era knows who Terry Funk is. Fight forever. And I hate when the current, I don't want to say hate. I dislike that the current, and I know it's homage and respect. This is just me, my idiosyncrasies. Just like when everyone says, this is awesome. I get it's interactive. You do what you want. You pay your ticket, do whatever you want. But this whole thing, fight forever, it's for every match. It's overused, just like blood in AEW or non-blood in WWE or different angles, or the women who wear hardly any clothes, and that's why you geeks and goons and neckbeards and mouth breathers and virgins go out and touch a pair. I could smell you from here. No offense, it's not to my audience, but you know who you are. I watch women's wrestling for the physicality. Hello? For the athleticism, for the character, the presentation, the story time. And yeah, they're going to dress differently. But you really, I know you guys are watching for garters and thongs and OnlyFans. And maybe you got a little lotion in the basket. No puñeta. I'm just saying. And I know I'm bouncing around here, but this is what the show is. Ad-lib and organic. One man, unique, unedited, unscripted, raw dog. Like how I say that when I'm calm? And again, fight forever. Terry Funk and Dory Funk Jr. The Funk Brothers. So you can get the funk out. Terry and Dory Funk Jr. Now, not only are they generational grapplers, Dory Sr., Dory Funk Jr., one of the toughest men, cerebral, laid back. You'd never know it if you saw that man in the street, but he'd take your friggin' head off. You know how to use the F word. That's how tough Dory Funk Jr. was. You guys know the history, or at least I hope you do, and if not, you know now. That's why you're here. Former world champion. Over in Japan, they were legends. They were one of the talent and workers and folks and guys that started with bringing over American gaijins over to Japan. I mean, that's just a fact. And Terry Funk, I don't have to tell you everything. The longevity of the Funks and how great they were in the 70s, into the 80s, into the 90s, and into the 2000s. Dory Funk Jr. just recently was in the ring. One of the greatest tag teams, and look at the era of the legends that I'm pulling out here. And you guys know my history. I had a chance to be in the ring with Terry Funk. It's written about in Justin Roberts' book, Best Seat in the House, when he was in the WWE. Myself and Tommy Capone that night in Hammond, Indiana at the Civic Center. Funk's hometown. I said whole town, didn't I? You know I'm always fucking up. You guys know the whole Bully Ray story. Don't get me started, because we'll be here for an hour and I'll never mention the tag teams. Bully Ray said to me backstage in 07 and 08 when we were competing against Team 3D, that's right, the Dudley Boys, for the World Tag Team titles of the NWA. Myself and Oman Tortuga, Diablo Santiago, the Outcast Killers, a series of tables matches. Yeah, we lost. So what? Bully Bubba, if you will, said to me backstage in the dressing rooms. He said, give the Guardian of Chaos Big Daddy 6 spots and he'll fuck up 5 of them. I consider that to be a compliment. Coming from the host of Busted Open Radio, co-host Busted Open After Dark, 2-time Hall of Famer, perhaps one of the greatest tag teams of all time. And we'll get on to that. I'm not insulted. 30 minutes in, we're in the 70s here. Greatest tag teams, perhaps, of all time, and especially from the era. We're talking about Terry and Dory Funk Jr. Let's move on. The Graham brothers. And I'm not talking about Mike, although he was a solid worker in his own right. I'm talking about the legendary Eddie Graham, the insane Dr. Jerry Graham, and of course later on, the advent of Crazy Luke Graham. Jerry Graham was nuttier than a porterlet at a peanut convention. Riding around in limousines, the legendary stories are Cadillacs with VKM Vince Jr. That's good shit, pal. Lighting up $100 bills to light his stogie. He had his issues. He had his problems. But Dr. Jerry Graham and Eddie Graham, one of the toughest men around, the legendary Florida territory, what he did for the youth and giving back to the community. Like I said, it's all about that. And if you ain't doing that, you ain't nothing. Because you're going to be asked, what did you do? You guys know what I'm talking about. So tell me. I'm still working on my list myself. Eddie Graham and what he did for Florida and the talent he pumped out down there. Do your research. Do your due diligence. Research is your friend. And then Crazy Luke, who was a tough customer in his own right later on in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Dr. Jerry Graham and my father, who's now going to be 83 years old. He's still alive, thank God. He didn't know a lot about pro wrestling. You know, he used to, when I was a kid at 7, 8 years old, him and my mother, my uncle, my aunt took me to the live events at the New Haven Arena because they said, if we take him to see this, we won't have to sit up till midnight anymore. And with this kid, because he has to watch pro wrestling and he'll see that it's fake or phony. Well, what a mistake that was, because I became twice the fan. So even though they watched it, especially, you know, my dad did, but he was never a huge fan of it, as you were being interrupted here. But he used to say, I said, Dad, well, who was your favorites? And who do you remember when you were a kid now in his 80s? He said he remembers the Graham brothers, of all people. Of course, Bruno Sammartino. But he remembers Eddie and Dr. Jerry and seeing them live, whether it was in the arenas or the outdoor venues here in Connecticut, which you know, guys, is the hub of pro wrestling for the Northeast, and the history is unbelievable in this whole area where I grew up. So yeah, I travel and I'm familiar and have many friends from down south, out west, the Midwest, up north. But this area is a rat race, and if you could make it here, you could make it anywhere. Yeah, it's different. The people are nuts. I say it all the time. I'm a mix of everywhere. That's why the everyman. That's just a fact. I am the American dream. As simple can get. One of you, and you're one of me. I'm not anybody. Yeah, I had a rub and touch with greatness and something that I loved and still love. You could all do it if you want to. So anyway, my father would say the Graham brothers. or he would say Skull Murphy, guys like that. That's Antonina Rocca. That's who my father remembers. He was more of a boxing fan, a pugilist fan. You know, Ali, Foreman, Frazier, Ernie Shavers, Ken Norton. Into Sugar Ray, Hitman Hearns, Roberto Duran. You guys get it. Wilfredo Benitez. I don't have to go on. Boom Boom Mancini. You guys get it. But that's what my father said, to put you in the time machine here of who he remembers. The Graham brothers. Obviously kayfabe, but what a team. And Vince loved the Grahams, especially Jerry. You guys know the history. If not, research it. We move on into a pair of tag teams that were unbelievable for the era of what they did in this area, playing on ethnicity and backgrounds and what was going on in current cultures, especially the strong ethnicity in this area, especially in the city, of whether it be the Hispanic, the Puerto Rican, the Irish, the Italian, the Polish, now illegals. That's right, I said illegals because it's illegal. But the team of Mr. Fuji and Mr. Saito, and then the team of Mr. Fuji and Professor Toru Tanaka. Saito and Tanaka to team up with Fuji, they were the muscle, especially Tanaka. You know him from the James Bond films. He was a laid-back guy, I believe part Polynesian as well. Like a Sherman tank. I remember seeing Tanaka and Fuji and Saito in different combinations live here in this area. And remember, a lot of the legends and heroes lived here. They lived in this area. Well-known hotbed, the history. You talk about Atlanta, Georgia, or the Carolinas or whatever for the NWA, and world class for Texas, and the deep-rooted history of Florida and the territories, whether it be San Francisco, St. Louis. You can go on and on with the territories. I said Georgia, the Carolinas, and Texas. I get it. Canada. But there was nothing like this area, the big arenas and just the sheer population of people. So I want you guys to grasp the history. No better, just different. We know the difference. I've broken it down here before. But they played the gimmick, played the part, played the ethnicity, and they were double tough, and they added a lot to the 70s in tag teams. Fuji, Saito, and Tanaka. Now, you guys have heard, and maybe you haven't before. Let me adjust, because you know this is my life wrapped up in chains, as is all of us. But I served 25 years behind the walls to protect you and society. A job that people were afraid to do. Walk a mile and you understand what I'm talking about. With respect, amongst the worst of the worst. Something you wouldn't want to do, people you're afraid of. I'm blessed. I'm just happy to be here. To continue to be here to lead my family. So the story, back to the legendary World Gym in this area where a lot of the guys would go to work out. And I was in college at the time, trying to, still begin my journey there in the early 80s as someone who went on to be a talent in this, a performer in this industry. World Gym is where everyone went to work out. I did as well. So did the college football team, so on and forth. I was bouncing in the local discotheques. It was kind of like Studio 54, but on a little smaller scale here in this area. But what a day, what a time. Guys, the middle to late 70s, especially the late 70s into the early, middle, and late 80s, there was nothing like it. I'll even say into the early 90s before things drastically changed. So I consider myself very fortunate, very humble. So I'm in the gym, just get finished up with my workout. I don't know what I am at this time. I'm probably 19 years old, okay? Finished my workout. I forget who was in the gym that day. I know the Samoans were there, because it's where I met Tonga Kid at the discotheque and at World Gym. I believe Jesse Ventura was there, maybe Martel, Morocco. just guys that I may have remembered that were there that day, Fuji, obviously. So I come walking out, and said, you know, gang showers back then. We all showered together, man. What? It's not what you think. Don't be so uptight. I don't care what you do. Keep it to yourself. Don't push it on me. Live and let live. No one need to know your business. You don't have to shout it out and prove yourself. Nobody gives a fuck. I know I don't. But anyway, so I turned to the left, and there's Fuji in all his splendor. The Longini hanging out the whole 9 yards, soaped up. So, you know, as you're walking by, you hear something naturally turn because it was wide open. That's the way you had to go out the locker rooms. I wasn't pecker checking. I turn and look. And there's Fuji all soaked up. He turns and looks at me. And he's pissing in the shower. Of course, I'd look down at that point. He's soaked up. Whatever he said to me, have a good day, whatever he called me. I don't know what he... So I continue to walk by. I don't think I said arigato, but I said, Mr. Fuji, pissing in the shower. What would you rather be? Here's the question as we speak of that story. Pissed off or pissed on? Ponder that. I'm verklempt. I'm bumfuzzled. Ponder that. Pissed off or pissed on? Which would you rather be? Now, don't get me wrong. I know my family will see this. I apologize. I have pissed on a few people before. I'm going to be honest. But I'd rather be pissed off than pissed on. Carry on here. We're going longer than I wanted. Let's talk about Tony Garea in tag team wrestling and the greatest tag teams of the 70s, or top tag teams of the 70s. And it's all related to today's current business, and that's why I'm doing this. Tony Garea, who I know personally because he still lives in this area. I used to hang out at his son's bar, Paulie G's. We had all the pictures of the stars of the WWF hanging up in the bar, and I was fortunate enough to have my autographed 8x10 amongst the luminaries. I didn't belong there, but it was up there. They even had a brawl on SmackDown, I believe, when they were doing those barroom brawls with the Acolytes, the APA, you know, Layfield and, damn, Ron Simmons. So they had the big brawl right up there, and I had to pass by from the Max prison on the way home because it was a medium Max and youth Max right up the road where I worked. You guys know that. Stopped in there for a beer. You know, it cost me $20 to get home at night. I was single, second shifter. Don't hold me, you know, just get out at 11 o'clock. You're going to stop at the bar. Have a pop or two. Just a pop or two. What was I going home to? Radio, TV? It's just the life. I got to remember, I was single for 20 years. Long time. On the road, living the life. Had my daughters on my days off. Single father supporting 2 households. I know you guys feel my pain. A daughter who was very sick, just to bring the personal side, I know you guys feel my pain. We've all been through hard times. So back to Tony Garea. Kids are great, good people. Small bar right across from the golf course, Paulie G's. Again, it's in the vault on WWE. When Simmons and Layfield or Bradshaw used to do the brawls. They did them up at Timmy White's place in Providence, not too far from here. You guys know. Tony Garea, still agent for years in the WWF, a guy who was smart, stayed physically fit, probably in his late 70s, maybe is my father's age now, a little couple years younger, in his late 70s. Still looks great, still got that full head of hair, was an agent for years, a guy who worked the right way and got along with everybody and made a career and getting paid for pro wrestling for over 50 years. Now that's a smart man who thought about the future. Talk about one of the greatest tag team wrestlers of all time. Tony Garea is in that conversation. Teamed up and held championships with Haystacks Calhoun, Dean Ho, Larry Zbyszko, Rick Martel, Dominic Dominic DiNucci. Let those names sink in. And that was Tough Tony Gurria. From down under. Great family, great guy. Still stay in touch occasionally this day. I'm not sure where Tony is living now. Lived everywhere from Hamden to Pennsylvania to Florida, Australia, New Zealand. A great guy. With a beautiful woman right now, Mercy. Very nice lady. They love their dogs. But Tony Gurria, let that sink in. Ho, Zbyszko, no offense, Martel, DiNucci, Haystacks. Tony Gurria, perhaps one of the best tag team wrestlers of all time, along with guys like Ray Stevens and Nick Bockwinkel. Let's think about Midwest and West and the AWA and that territories. Traveled all over the world and the country. Ray Stevens, perhaps in the conversation of top 25, 50 wrestlers of all time. And in the 70s, perhaps definitely in the top 10. Some would say in the top 5. Nick Bockwinkel, class personified. The team of Ray Stevens and Nick Bockwinkel and throw in Bobby the Brain Heenan. They dominated every area that they went to. Legends, guys who had longevity. Think of Stevens from coast to coast. Bockwinkel from border to border. Heenan all around. Everything. The Brain. What a team that was. What an era. Again, throwing Bruiser and Crusher from that same area as well. I mean, think of the teams that we're talking about here. Jack and Jerry Briscoe. Jack Briscoe, one of the best singles competitors and amateur grapplers that you can imagine in the history of pro wrestling. Heavyweight champion, tag team champions. Jerry on to be an agent. Another guy like Gurria who played it smart in this business and made a living for 40, 50 years to this day. Has a podcast with Bradshaw, I guess, right? Still? I don't listen to it, but I'm just saying. The Briscoes were one of the best tag teams in the 70s into the 80s. And we know singles competition, Jack Briscoe. I'm talking about pure amateur grappling and some of the best. Can you name legends and teams like this that you'll be talking about from the 2000 to 2020s, this era, the last 5 years, 2 decades, whatever you want to talk about, decade, 30, 40, 50 years from now? I mean, we won't be here, but can you get the concept of what I'm doing here? So Ray Stevens, Nick Bockwinkel, singles as well. World champion Bockwinkel. People throw him in the class with Ric Flair, Harley Race, Bruno Sammartino. They really do. Bockwinkel had that kind of effect, especially for the territory. And Ray Stevens, again, didn't matter if where he worked, West Coast, South, here in the Northeast. Ray Stevens is a legend all over the world. And again, I just got finished. I'm bouncing back and forth. Jack and Jerry Briscoe. Look at the names. I'll even step out and go with a team that you may not have heard within the World Wrestling Federation of that era of the Valiant Brothers and Fuji and Saito and Tanaka and Gurria and Zbyszko and all the different teams of that era, the Lumberjacks, whoever you want to talk about. What about Tony Parisi and Luis Sedan? Do you know the name of Tony Parisi and Luis Sedan? Here's a tag team that in today's days would be one of the best. Back then, they were mid-card. And let's even throw in, we'll go south of the border. A legendary Lucha Libre team, just for their name appeal alone and longevity. Mil Mascaras, the man of 1,000 masks, and his brother Dos Caras. His real life brother, unless that's a work too, who knows nowadays. Mil Mascaras and Dos Caras were one of the greatest Mexican tag teams and over to Japan. Not a huge impact in this country. Mascaras was tough to work with, I hear, although some people said he was great. He's a legend, smart, got paid. Okay, difficult to work with, but he made it work, and look at his longevity and what a legend he was in his country and worldwide. Dos Caras, his brother, not as much as him, but still legends. Look at some of their matches over in Japan, Mexico. Think out of the box here for the era that we're in of the 70s. And I know there's a whole bunch of other teams that I'm missing here. Give me your thoughts on these teams or somebody I missed. or somebody that you think should be included in this list from the era of, say, the 70s, of some of the greatest tag teams that you don't have, and why the business is not what it should be here in 2025. The Bruiser and the Crusher, the three Valiant brothers, Gordman and Goliath, Rhodes and Murdoch, Dory and Terry Funk, Eddie, Jerry, and Crazy Luke, the Graham brothers, Fuji and Saito, Fuji and Tanaka. You could even throw in, although it's a little bit more toward the early 80s, and we'll get on to that, who's the East-West connection and the North-South connection. That's more into the 80s. North-South connection, Dick Murdoch and Jesse Ventura, and you know the East-West in the 80s. So I'm just going to throw it in here, Ventura and Adonis. Just to give you examples of all these different tag teams. And then someone like Tony Garea. Who's the Tony Garea of this era? Haystacks, Ho. Dean Ho is incredible. Do your research. Dominic DeNucci, Larry Zbyszko. Tony Garea is... Who would Tony Garea be today? I can't praise, and again, I didn't want to go on and on about it. I just wanted to mention this. And I'm going to do this in segments. We'll come back with the 80s. Ray Stevens. Do your research. Nick Bockwinkel with Heenan. So, I just wanted to... This really has been something I've wanted to do for a while. I know there's 1,000 programs on social media and on YouTube about top tag teams. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about all the different tag teams from the different eras and how many there were, and the emphasis on tag team wrestling. And what you miss with the emotional investment and the ring psychology and the storytelling. Tag team wrestling was dominant in the 70s and 80s. Yeah, there was always the world champion or a U.S. champion, especially the world championships. I get that. But tag team wrestling was right there with the world heavyweight champion, as important. Now there's 15 other titles. Tag team wrestling is virtually non-existent. That's why I'm here, in the depth of these eras and the tag teams and what's going on today. So tag teams for that era. Let me just go through a couple of things that I did jot down, because we'll get on to even teams from the 90s. The 80s, though, was the explosion of tag team wrestling. First, and I missed a lot in the 70s. I didn't talk about several another dozen other tag teams from the 70s. Especially that middle to late era of the 70s. The Executioners. I mean, I could go on and on with teams. How could you leave out Pat O'Connor and Killer Kowalski and at one time Stud? The Executioners were one of the greatest tag teams of all time in the 70s in that era. Think about that. Again, that's why each one of these episodes, I can do an hour on each era. Could I do that about today's tag teams? No. So stand by for a second. I want to make sure that I don't leave out the OGs from the 70s. Again, put people down there that you have knowledge of. You want to go research it, yeah, but I have a connection because this was my era. I was 8, 9, 10, 12, 11, 13, 14 years old, all the way up to 17, 18 years old in the 70s. I remember it vividly. So a lot of you guys in this audience here, and I'll leave the over 50 crowd out of it. No offense, guys, because we're together. But I'm talking about you guys at 40 and under. Have you ever seen these guys in person? No. Hopefully you've seen them on tape, because I know you didn't see them live. So that's why I'm here, to compare that, how the emphasis and importance, as I repeat that. So don't go anywhere. Go to my open monologue. We're here talking about some of the best tag teams of the 70s, the depth, the rosters, the storylines, the personalities, and compared to how it's just persona non grata in 2025. I'll say that to say this, because I tell it like it is, and we kept it less than an hour. Man, I'm proud of myself on that one. Wait till we get into the 80s. Don't you dare miss it.